Hello everyone, my name is Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. Hope you survived the experience. I want to start off by saying that this is a great time to be a fan of superheroes. Thanks to the rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the billion-dollar blockbusters it regularly births, the genre has never been more mainstream. It's no longer just for kids, or adults still clinging to childhood, despite what the Bill Maher's of the world may say. Superheroes are a genuine cultural phenomenon and, like all trends before it, will continue to evolve. Now with that in mind, I'd like to focus on a superhero franchise that's evolving more than most. Fittingly enough, that franchise is X-Men, a team literally fueled by evolution, at least the kind that you find in comic books. While all superheroes change, few have changed more in recent years than the X-Men. And it's not just because Marvel and Disney now have the movie rights back. What's been unfolding in the X-Men comics lately is unlike anything we've seen in their 50-year history. As someone who has followed X-Men since the days of the 90s cartoon, I couldn't be more excited. And if you've ever been curious about the X-Men, be it from the movies, shows, or nerdy relatives, this is a great time to dive into the world of Marvel's most famous mutants. What makes these recent comics so exciting, you ask? How is this different than previous upheavals? Those are all good, relevant questions. And those who have followed X-Men comics for any span of time have probably heard it before. Marvel has a long history of making those kinds of claims and shaking things up, often just for the sake of shaking things up. This happens for all superhero teams to some extent, but it tends to happen more frequently for the X-Men. And until recently, it happened in all the wrong ways and for all the wrong reasons. For a time, Marvel actually diminished the X-Men's role in the Marvel Universe, mostly due to them not owning the movie rights. But that's a long, frustrating, and downright infuriating story for another video. This recent shakeup is different. Under the masterful penmanship of Jonathan Hickman, Marvel has achieved something special with the X-Men, and it all began with a major event called House of X Powers of 10. Now please bear with me, I'm about to geek out a little here. As a longtime X-Men fan, one who has seen the comics very wildly over the years, I honestly can't remember the last time a shakeup has made me this excited. And after enduring some very dark years, some quite recently, Hickman has reinvigorated this 50-year franchise in ways I haven't seen since the days of Chris Claremont. Now, I'm not going to spoil every detail of the story. That would take hours on end, and even I can't geek out for that long. If you want details like that, check out the graphic novel compilation. I'll leave links to Amazon and Comixology in the description. And if you want an even broader overview, check out the one done by Comics Explained. That video should give you more than enough to appreciate what Hickman has achieved with this story. And make no mistake, it's an overdue achievement. The most important thing that House of X Powers of 10 do is redefine mutants in how they see themselves. For years, they've been many things. Outsiders, freaks, refugees, endangered, targets, survivors, heroes, villains, you name it, they've been called it. Sometimes fairly, most of the time unfairly. As a metaphor for minorities and marginalized groups, that's to be expected. It fits with the themes established by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby all those years ago. And while it has made for some very uncanny stories over the years, if that's not too fitting a word, it has led to a few problems. For years, the X-Men underwent this brutal cycle of sorts. They stand up for themselves, they fight for peace and understanding, and for a while they make progress. Then something terrible happens, often involving killer robots, renegade mutants, or extinction events. They fight back, but all that progress they made just gets lost in the process. They basically have to start the fight all over again. It can be frustrating, but that's often how comics work. Things tend to revert back to a certain status quo. Things rarely change that drastically. But even by comic standards, House of X Powers of 10 is a huge shift. Now, mutants are no longer living in fancy mansions which get destroyed every other week. They're no longer living in glorified ghettos either, surrounded by other humans just trying to keep their heads down, hoping one doesn't unleash a sentinel on them. They're not even living in sanctuaries built on islands, asteroids, or hellish dimensions. Trust me, that last one is less pleasant than you think. Now, they have their own nation, Krakoa. It's not just a refuge. It's not just a safe domain for mutants to live without fear of sentinel attacks. The events of House of X Powers of 10 establish this living island as something so much more. Now, beyond the aesthetics, which are breathtaking thanks to Pepe Larraz's art, Krakoa has changed how mutants see themselves. Yes, they're still individuals who happen to have the mutant X gene, But now they're also part of something greater, an emerging society with its own identity and culture. They're literally evolving into their own thing. They're still part of humanity, but they're also branching off from it. This is perfectly reflected in one of Magneto's less menacing speeches, relatively speaking. In a discussion with his daughter Polaris, he establishes what sets Krakoa apart from other mutant sanctuaries. To do that, he draws parallels with how humans changed from simple hunter-gatherers to an organized agrarian civilization. And as part of that process, people stopped moving around, looking for a place to call home. Instead, they found a piece of land, built their society around it, and declared that to be their home. From that foundation, their ideals, identity, and culture grew. It didn't just help them survive, it helped them build something that allowed them to thrive. That's the main difference. Krakoa doesn't just give them a sanctuary from human bigotry, it gives them a foundation from which they can actually prosper. And that's exactly what they do in this story. A big part of that involves not cutting themselves off completely from the human world. Yes, that's still a world that loves attacking them with killer robots every chance they get, but in order to thrive, they need to cooperate and not just merely segregate. That's where Krakoa's unique mutant-born features come into play. Thanks to its exotic flora, the X-Men create a series of pharmaceutical drugs that treat disease, alleviate mental decline, and increase overall life expectancy. And they don't hide this from humanity. They offer it, albeit for a price. A fair but critical price. And thanks to their willingness to share this valuable resource, Krakoa is recognized as a full-fledged nation. Moreover, it gives the rest of the world a very strong incentive not to attack them, which tends to happen a lot whenever mutants converge on a small piece of land. Now that's a good incentive, but it doesn't stop there. One of the biggest changes that House of X Powers of 10 introduce, a change that means more than just having a nation and a society, is the resurrection protocols. It's exactly what it sounds like, and then some. In essence, the X-Men have now ensured that mutants can no longer die. Sure, they can be killed in a battle. And in the story, some of them are killed at one point, but they easily come back to life, courtesy of Krakoa's hatchery. I won't get too deep into specifics. I'll just say that the power and effectiveness of this protocol manifests in many ways, both within this story and the others that come from it. Now, it may seem like an extreme plot device of sorts, but in the context of X-Men comics, this is huge. For so many years, going back to the Chris Claremont era, mutants have always faced this dilemma. They try to live in peace among humans, despite constantly getting attacked, harassed, and hated. It never seems to get better, but the alternative is creating a sanctuary. While those can succeed for a short while, it always ends the same. It just puts mutants in a smaller, more concentrated area that makes them even easier to attack. And it has led to some truly horrific events. See Grant Morrison's E for Extinction for the worst possible scenario. The resurrection protocols help them transcend that dilemma. Now, mutants can't be wiped out. Kill one mutant with a sentinel, and they'll just be reborn, complete with all their memories, abilities, and a very strong motivation to fight back. That's a powerful disincentive to attack mutants. Combine that with the life-saving drugs, the X-Men offer both a carrot and a stick to humanity. Either thrive alongside mutants, or try to fight an enemy that literally cannot die anymore. It's an extreme recourse, one unlike anything that has ever been tried in a mainline X-Men comic. But it works. House of X Powers of 10 take this setup and follow it up with some incredible world building. The X-Men, under the guidance of Charles Xavier and Magneto, effectively take the dream and expand it, and it's truly a sight to behold. But there's one more detail to House of X Powers of 10 that's worth mentioning, one that adds a major complication to the mix. While Krakoa has finally given mutants a chance to prosper, the effort to establish it involved a startling revelation, and that's where Moira McTaggart comes in. Now, if you only know Moira through the movies and cartoons, prepare for something very different. This version of Moira, and again, I don't want to spoil too much, it establishes her as the most important character in the history of X-Men. Who she is, what she does, and the role she plays, it's nothing short of uncanny. Beyond prompting Charles Xavier and Magneto to unite once more, she reveals something else about the struggle of mutants. It helps set the stage for a looming threat, one that could doom humans and mutants alike. It's a very different kind of threat compared to what they faced before. And confronting it means doing more than they've ever done or dreamed of, for that matter. That means many of these iconic characters will get to shine like never before. And if all that hasn't sparked your curiosity, then honestly I can't help you. I won't keep forcing it. I'll just say that House of X and Powers of 10 made being an X-Men fan exciting again. At a time when they're also poised to join the MCU, things have never been brighter for Marvel's most uncanny mutants. Since their heyday in the 90s, it felt like the X-Men were always struggling to recapture their former glory. Well, now they've officially raised the bar. We don't yet know how things will unfold with the X-Men and Krakoa. We also don't know whether it'll affect their eventual arrival in the MCU. I just know that I've never been more thrilled to be an X-Men fan, and I welcome anyone and everyone to join in. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thank you for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Take care and stay safe.